Hi everyone, I'm Abraham Diaz. I'm glad you could tune in to listen about how you can better support our emerging bilinguals in their instruction of vocabulary. Today I will be giving out principles and practices to best support our students as they are learning a new language and acquiring that L2. Today, I will be supporting the practices and principles that I give to you with evidence from Short and Echevarria, Nisbet and Tyndall, Dr. Dantes Whitney, and an article from Coloring Colorado. So the five principle and/or practices I'll be giving to you today is one, promoting consciousness; two, vocabulary notebooks; three, idioms and expressions; four, how to provide many opportunities for meaningful contextualized practice using all of the language modes; and finally, the application to Common Core standards. So let's go ahead and get started. So what I want to first talk about is promoting consciousness, right? So what do we want most or all of the work for our students to be like? What attitudes and habits would we like our students to achieve as they are acquiring this new language? You know, in terms of a teacher perspective, we're providing them scaffolding techniques, right? Considering the numbers of words that we give to them in a unit or lesson, the visual charts, word walls, providing sentence frames, sentence starters, and graphic organizers, right? And those are only a few ways that we scaffold for our students, right? But in terms of the student side, what is it that we would like them to do for themselves, right? How can they become more independent in their learning? You know, even though we are providing this to our students, are we in a way limiting the students' creativity in their learning? Are they maybe not able to learn in a way that best fits their needs? So what do? If we take in a lecture from Dr. Dantes Whitney from 31 seconds to 45 seconds, she says you actually need to plan to teach vocabulary explicitly throughout your lessons and also teach students strategies this type of awareness, right? So one of the things we should do in our classrooms is provide ample opportunities where our students are able to utilize that new vocabulary that they learn, right? We are, in a way, trying to mix and match the four domains, right? Reading, writing, speaking, and listening. And so, what does this do? This helps to then bridge into the students being able to use it in different contexts and settings. But how is it that we can do that? If we think about it, one of the great ways for this to occur is to involve other teachers, right? The collaborating with other teachers can actually allow students to listen and read in other subjects, as in the article from Coloring Colorado states. Therefore, it is vitally important to teach keywords that children will need to comprehend text and learn the content. So, if we teach a group of vocabulary words to our students and provide in our classrooms time to know what the word means and for them to find a meaning for themselves, then we can showcase in our class how this word can be utilized in other situations. And then when they go to other classrooms, if other teachers use the same vocabulary group, then they will be able to learn in a different context, in a different environment. So, what's one of the strategies that we can provide to our students where they can become independent with their learning of new vocabulary? Well, we can do vocabulary notebooks. In connection to promoting consciousness, this is a practice that will help best fit some of, not all of our students' needs. And like I said, promoting consciousness, right? So it will help students to be more provide that self efficacy that we would like them to do eventually. And so doing a vocabulary notebook will help with that, right? You can either get a specific notebook for our students, create a specific notebook for our students, or you can just have students keep a journal that is specific to your class with newly learned vocabulary and for them to draw, write the definition, you know, do what they need to do in order to memorize and be able to utilize the vocabulary in other ways. This can also give an organizational strategy to our students, but it is again up to our students to organize it, right? To have that self-initiation, and the responsibility again becomes to the student. So as Dr. Maria Dantes Whitney provides in her lecture from 351 to 401, use learning targets to keep their own vocabulary is a good way to promote word consciousness, right? Short and Echevarria also support the idea, right, by creating, in a way, a personal dictionary, right? Students are able to add meaningful notes to help remember the word and take quote unquote ownership, which is said on page 64. So they are able to add pictures. They are also able to provide their translation in their native language, right, in their L1. And again, if we are able to do journal checks, it creates an assessment for our students, right? We are able to see that progression within our students' learning. The third principle that I would like to talk about is idioms and expressions. So this is more of a way where students want to become part of the different environments they are a part of, right? With English, learning the different idioms and expressions can be very important to them. There are many expressions and idioms used not only in the language of English, but also in their own cultural own language that possibly does not mean the same thing in English, right? So, a way to practice language in a different format is practicing non literal meanings. So, again, students are very curious of how they can use vocabulary in different ways, idioms and expressions is definitely one that could be used, right? And then if they are curious enough, we're able to give that explanations, right? I know that for myself, I use the idiom like let's call it a day, right? We are able to use um, this idiom in different contexts, right? We don't actually mean like we're gonna call it the day or just be done with the day, right? It just means that we're good for right now, that we're gonna stop learning or stop what we're doing and focus either on another thing or, just in a way, go home. Um, so would be a perfect example of when to use an idiom and expression in our classroom, right? Colorín Colorado in their article say this can be accomplished through oral language activities that follow the text discussion, right? So again, providing activities that can do this. For example, role play. Students are able to role play different idioms and expressions. Other students become focused and engaged since they are. It could be a really fun activity. There could be a lot of laughter, right? Showing a quick video and TikTok, especially now with TikTok, the use of social media and how idioms and expressions are used in everyday life. Again, students will engage as they're wanting to use their second language in a non-academic manner as well. Now, for the fourth principle, providing many opportunities for meaningful contextualized practice using all of the language modes. So, what does this mean? This means to um, to become exposed to the words in different meanings, right? Um, in this principle or this practice, interaction is an important factor. In 2015, Nisbet and Tyndall said on page 77 of their article, engage in meaningful contextualized practicing involving speaking, listening, reading, and writing. So again, the involvement of all four domains. Uh, this, in other words, means authentic communication. One way to do this is providing opportunities of peer-to-peer communication. This can be a think, pair, share opportunity, opportunities to give feedback after a presentation or after a partner speaks, right? Role playing that conversational skills to our students. Another way is recording and listening students to themselves. Remembering to acknowledge the idea of cognates within this practice, false cognates as well, and translanguaging. So when translanguaging used to find the correct translation. Again, this helps with students being able to process. So why is this practice important? It helps them to acknowledge how they process the information, right? So if we're able to use those strategies within our classroom where students have that authenticity within their communication, it helps them process it faster and it helps them be able to speak or write the vocabulary words that they've learned. Lastly, repetition is key. So one of the things that we can do, or that you could do, is start off each day with a warm up using prior class vocabulary or prior units vocabulary, just to make sure that they are still understanding what the word means and how it could be utilized in different contexts. Having a discussion, having in either small groups, partner, um, whole class discussions is another method to use this principle. And again, it helps with reviewing the vocabulary. So, and then don't forget to reiterate the key objectives and goals of the lesson with the vocabulary. Lastly, one of the probably more important factors when we are planning our lessons is how this applies to Common Core standards, right? How do these principles and practices apply to the classroom? Well, they fulfill many Common Core state standards, at least here in Oregon, for many content areas, right? So, for example, if we're looking at the ELP standard number 7, which states an ELL can adapt language choices to purpose, task, and audience when speaking and writing, right? That's from the ELP standards in Oregon. So that's from the Oregon Department of Education. Um, Short and Echevarria on page 77 state for students to comprehend reading passages with these words, they need to have practice opportunities to learn and analyze their meanings when used in text, right? So the the supporting evidence and the standard relate to one another, right? So how can this be done? For example, if I was to do vocabulary and use this principle within a business environment, right? I would first want to give my students the state standard. Then I would want them to give them the content standard, right? So we, in a way, are providing the objective of the unit, the lesson, and then afterwards we are providing the end goal to our students. This helps them acknowledge that vocabulary that we will be learning will be applicable to the lesson, to the unit, and then with along the way they will see how they can use it in their own way, when they're talking to their peers, when they're outside of our classroom, right? Or if they are part of other student groups, how they can use it in other student groups that English is the main language. So for example, again, going back to my example, if I was to do this in a business environment, if one of the goals and standards is to explain a transaction from a business account, I would first identify the vocabulary, and then make sure that the vocabulary and the standard are in sync. Then what would happen is I would determine the words that I want my students to know, um, in my classroom, and how it can become applicable in other classrooms and in their everyday life. So again, if I was to also incorporate another principle that we just talked about, right, I would have them write it in their vocabulary notebooks, which then helps them become more conscious of their learning. So they become more independent of how they can utilize the word. All right. I hope you guys have enjoyed the principles and practices I've shared with you. And any questions, let me know. All right. Have a great day.